Hey everybody, this is Matt Avery here with another RaceDay Scoring Timer Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to be talking about cross country. We're deep in the season and wanted to do a quick tips webinar, just going over some of the critical points that you may have missed with cross country setup. And specifically today, I'll be going over kind of the order of operations that we typically suggest for cross country, some definitions and of different settings and the way that they work, and some examples of reports and other things. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. If you just joined, we're going to be talking about cross-country today, specifically going over some quick tips. As we go through the webinar, I'm going to be going fairly quick, but we will be recording this and we'll have the slides available to you after the session is over. We'll be sending out an email with all of that information after the slides are done and through. So if you have questions, feel free to use the GoToWebinar panel on your right to ask those questions. I do have James Harris with me on the back end here responding to those questions, and he'll be bringing up any ones that he thinks need to be brought up to everyone in the room. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, feel free to type in any questions you do have. Today's session is not going to be a full training guide for cross country. Would take quite a bit longer than we want to spend today. And also every cross country race is a bit different and our recommendations may be different for different folks. So if you do have questions about best practices for your particular event, always feel free to reach out and we'll help you out with your event specifically. So let's jump right in. So today, the things that we're going to be covering are creating a race, setting up scored events, the different ways you might want to do that for a cross-country race, team types, what are they, how should you use them for cross-country, when is it important for you to have multiple team types, and when is it not important for you to have multiple team types, going through all of the different team scoring rules that are particular to cross country. There's a whole lot of them, and some of them may not make sense for you to even think about. So we're going to go through each of those one by one. Report building and customization. With cross country, we kind of are hands off with automatically generating reports for you because everyone's events are so different, and the way that they do their scored event and their team type setup is so different that we felt it best to leave it up to the user to decide how to build out all the different kinds of reports that they want for their race. And I'm going to jump in and show you some different options there. And then finally, once we get through all of this stuff, we'll actually be touching streams, locations, and importing participants and teams. So with cross country, you'll notice if you've done training with RaceDay scoring otherwise, the order of operations is a little bit different. We typically suggest you actually set up your scored events and teams types and your scoring rules and your reports before you go in and actually set up all of your streams, locations, and participants. The streams and locations don't necessarily have to be in that order, but the big thing that's different is you kind of got to get your scored events and team types and the scoring rules all set up before you do things like report building and before you import participants. It's best. So this is our general guide for what we think is the best order to do things in for cross country in particular. So let's get started. So in for cross country scoring, you know, a lot of events are not using RunSignup for registration. It's just not something that you would typically do, have kids register for a race. Usually, you know, you got your team, your coaches sending you rosters offline. Now RunSignup does have some pretty nice results options for cross country that we integrate with. So we do recommend that if you are, you know, not using RunSignup for registration, which you probably aren't, creating the race and pushing it to RunSignup. So whenever you create a local race in RaceDay scoring, there's going to be an option to publish it to RunSignup. Use that if you want online results. You don't have to use RunSignup for registration or anything like that. You can just use it for the results publishing features, which are really nice. Now, if you're not doing RunSignup for results, that's called a local race. We call that a local race. Something particular I get questions about quite frequently with local races is, hey, I set up my registration events, but I want to change them and I don't know how to. If you set up a local race and need to update any of the race information and you did not publish it to RunSignup to change it there, it's all available to you in the participant sync area under the edit race button. That brings you right back to that race creation little wizard. So when you are setting up a race for cross country, we typically suggest that you set up registration events for each race that has a separate start time. So this varies, obviously. Dual meets are different from your weekend invitationals. So for a dual meet, you might have everybody running at once. You might have 2 start times. For invites, you might have 6, 7, 8, whatever. Typically, we just suggest 1 registration event per start time. You can certainly add more of them, and you might want to do that for your particular purposes. So kind of does depend. You can always break things out later. If you're doing like boys and girls running at the same time, you can separate that out later if you want to. But so it's kind of up to you, and you'll get a feel for it once you start setting up some races, which way you may want to go. So once you have your race built, the next step for cross country is typically to set up scored events. Once you're in the race, you go to the scored events area. I use the quick setup option. This just automatically creates a scored event for each and every registration event you have. It's nice and simple, nice and easy. So like I was talking about before, typically we see 1 scored event is set up for each distinct start time, a race in cross country lingo. Usually these would be something like varsity boys, varsity girls, JV boys, JV girls, where the boys start at 5 p.m., the girls start at 5:30, and then the JV boys start at 6 and the JV girls start at 6:30, for example. Now, if you wanted to, you can, if they all started like at the same time, you could run them together. We usually say if you have separate start times, just have separate scored events. If you did have boys and girls running together, let's say the JV race was all together at the end of the day, there is a setting in the scored event team scoring rules where you can say, I want to separate reports by gender. And that will automatically split out the boys and the girls within this scored event. So maybe you have varsity boys running separate from varsity girls, but for the JVs, they just said, hey, we don't got enough time. Let's put them all together into one big race, 1 start time. You can break that out later, and I'll be showing you how to do that. So just some good things to understand when you're doing this. Next, we're going to talk about team types. This is a pretty, it's a point of confusion sometimes. Basically, team types, you have to have a team type in order to create a team. So you have to have a single team type at least. Now, the question comes up, hey, do I need to create team types for all my JV and varsity teams as well? Not usually. I wouldn't suggest it typically. The reason you may want to set up team types for cross-country races would be specifically if you have like small school and large school teams, or division breakouts for college races, D1, D2, D3, and AIA, specifically if those groups are racing together. So if you had large school and small school running in 1 single start time, you may want to set up team types because that will allow you to break out the scoring and reports later. Now, if you had a situation where your small school and large school teams were at completely different start times, you wouldn't necessarily have to set up team types for them. But this is basically critical if you have this distinction between small school, large school, or D1, D2, D3, and they are all racing together in 1 start time. So if you don't have any of these, you just create 1 single team type called teams. Typically, this is all you'd ever want to do. There is one other wrinkle. If you wanted to or had to do something like the club national race for cross country has the open category and the masters category that actually race together, but they're scored differently. The masters, at least when I did it, was scored through 3, displaced through 5, and the open was scored through 5 and displaced through 7. And because we support scoring rules set in team types, you would have to do a separate team type and then apply the scoring rules to that team type differently. So usually, again, outside of all of these corner cases, it's just 1 team type, call it teams. It's nice and easy. We also provide this nice feature. If you don't create a team type ahead of time, when you are importing participant data, you supply the spreadsheet with all of the participants and team member details, and you didn't say what team type they were in, we give you the option to create a team type and say that all of the incoming teams are going to be of that new team type when you're importing the participant data. So we always recommend you set up team types first, but if you miss this step, we do give you a nice way to accommodate that in the participant import step. So in particular, you don't want to create JV and varsity team types. The reason you don't want to do that is that if you do create JV and varsity team types, you're now going to have to create 2 teams per school. So because team types are a way of saying, hey, this team is of this type, you're going to have to say, oh, okay, well, Gates-Chili High School now has 2 teams. There's Gates-Chili High School JV and Gates-Chili High School varsity. That's unnecessary and shouldn't be done. You really should have that distinction at the scored event level or in some other way. So you don't want to do team types for JV and varsity typically, unless there's something I'm not thinking about, but generally we suggest you don't do that. So when you are setting up team types, you do have to say which scored events each team type is available for, or it's valid for when setting them up. So this is always why we suggest setting up scored events first, because when you do the team type setup, you have to tell the system, hey, this team type I know I'm going to use in all of my races, or only half of the races maybe. So it's critical that you set up the scored events first and then set up your team types. That's also why we don't recommend importing participants first, because if you didn't have team types and you didn't have scored events, you could get to the step where you are able to add team types, but you wouldn't be able to create the team type because you don't have any scored events yet. So always set up scored events first, and then team types you can set up second, optionally, you don't have to. You can do that in the participant import if you need, but that's why we suggest these steps in this order. Next, once you have scored events and team types created, what you now want to do is actually set up all of your scoring rules. So it's not sufficient to just create the scored events and you're ready to go. You do have to do you have to set up the team scoring for each of your scored events. So this is why we try to suggest that people collapse or put together as much as they can into a single scored event, and then break out the scoring or reporting into separate things later. So if you had boys and girls running at the same time, you could create 2 scored events, but you don't necessarily have to. You could combine them into one event and then break out the boys and girls within that event. And that saves you time because you don't have to do the team scoring setup, which is the most labor intensive part on each and every single scored event you have. So that's why I kind of tell people, try to get as many items into your scored events as possible, so you have the least amount of scored events as possible. And typically the one limitation there is scored events are where you set your start times. So usually it's 1 scored event per start time. Anyway, it's just made easier if you have less of these. So we usually try and narrow down the amount of scored events if possible. When you go into the team scoring rules, you'll see that you have to select the scoring type, all of these different settings here, which we're going to go into detail on next. So when you get into the team scoring setup, the first thing you see is what type of scoring you're doing. It's relay or aggregate. Aggregate that encompasses both cross-country scoring as well as like corporate cup scoring, where everyone does a 5K and you're adding up their times or their positions or places or whatever. Cross-country scoring, obviously you want to say yes. The next setting is the separate report sections by gender. What this does is if you have it set to yes, it will automatically create separate sections for all reports that you create for this scored event for boys and girls. So you'll want to say yes to this only if this scored event has a mixture of boys and girls and you want them to be scored separately. You do not want to select this if you are saying JV boys is my scored event, because what that's going to do is it's going to create 2 sections within the JV boys, one called like JV boys girls and another one called JV boys boys, which just wouldn't make sense. So only use this setting if you really have a mixture of boys and girls racing at the same time. That's when you want to use this. And it's great if you have that situation. It may not be the case that you do this Maybe it's a small race where, again, it's a midweek event and you just have all the JVs running together. That's the perfect use case for this. It's super confusing if you set this up on a race that doesn't have a mixture, or a scored event that doesn't have a mixture, because then you'll see really wacky things happening. Like I said, JV boys, girls sections getting created for you. You'll get super confused. So don't touch this unless you have a mixture. Next, there's a setting to determine how tiebreakers are determined. This totally depends on your scenario. Different places do different tiebreakers. The one that I'll call out here is if you're timing an NCAA event, use that rule because they have a very specific kind of tiebreaker where they basically take each team that was tied and compare each and every position. So runner 1 from team 1 versus runner 2 from team 2, see who won. Runner 2 versus runner 2, see who won. Whichever team got the highest amount of wins between each member is the winner of that tie. So they have a very particular rule that they use for NCAA. Use that if you know you're doing NCAA. Otherwise, you got to see what your different locality requires. The setting for team time display, total user preference, doesn't impact scoring. It shows either the total or the average time of team members in some reports. I like average time better than total for this, so that's what I usually put in. Team scoring depth. So this depends. Again, earlier on, I had talked about a unique situation that I know exists with the US Club Cross Country Championships, where there's masters rules that are saying that they score through 3 and displace through 5, whereas open is score through 5 and displace through 7. If you have anything like that, you may need to set your team scoring depth at the team type level. Typically, you set this at the scored event level. So you definitely set this at the scored event level if you only have one team type, because that would be the same thing. If you have multiple, you need to make that decision, figure out, hey, are my small school boys scored differently than my large school boys? Meaning, do I need to displace through a different number for small school versus large school? If yes, then you'll need to set this to team type level. If not, leave it at scored event and you won't have to worry about a thing. And moving on, the scored event depth. This is where you tell the system how many members are we scoring through for each team, and how many members will have scores but do not count towards the team score and only displace other team members' scores. So that's your very, very standard 5 and 7 score through and displace through numbers. That's usually what you'll leave it at. If you don't know, that's probably what you're going to want. Next, there's a setting to allow under minimum to displace. This is off unless you really know that you need to allow teams to displace that have not met the scoring depth minimum. So it's kind of very particular. If a team was incomplete and you wanted to say that the 4th person should still displace, you may want this on. Typically, leave it off though. So ghosted runners is a setting that basically allows for teams that are incomplete to have fake participants added to their score so that they will still count in the scoring, but they'll be typically at the very bottom of the reports. So we do have some changes coming to this. Right now, it creates ghosted runners based on the last member of each team. The changes will make that so it will create a ghosted runner based on the last time of the very last person in the scored event completely, so that it will ensure that teams with ghosted runners never place ahead of teams who do not have ghosted runners, which is really its intended purpose. Next, the setting for qualifier depth is another thing that is I get questions on quite a bit. Typically, you don't need to touch this unless you are scoring a qualifier meet. So a qualifier meet would be like your regional championships for NCAAs, where you know that X teams and Y individuals not on qualifying teams will advance to the next meet. This will call out and say if a person in the team finisher list report is a team qualifier or an individual qualifier based on these rules. So typically it'll be, something like the top 3 teams or 2 teams advance, and then the next 10 individuals who are not a part of any qualifying teams are marked as an individual qualifier. So unless you're timing a race that has this aspect, leave it off. But basically, if you do need this setting, you have to enable it, and then you have to add in this qualifier column to any reports that you want to show this data in. Typically, you'd want it in the team finish list report. So coming soon, we do have, actually the next update, it's coming out this week probably, is Tier 2 scoring. So this is a pretty exciting feature for us. It will basically allow you to do automatic varsity JV distinctions. If you have an event where coaches do not declare any whether a participant is going to be JV or varsity in advance of the event, and they want to say, hey, the first 7 people that finish for this team, that's varsity, and everybody else is JV, this would allow you to do that automatically. So you could obviously do that manually if you needed to, figure out a way to, once the scoring is done, go in and change over the 8+ people, but this will give you a way to do that automatically. So that's coming soon. So you'll notice when you go and walk through the team scoring rules setup, you get this confirmation pop-up that comes up here, and it says, hey, we just letting you know we're going to delete these existing reports and we're going to rebuild new ones. So this is a thing that happens with RaceDay scoring. We basically create default reports for you, but if you change up your scoring such that it's a totally different kind of event, so when you initially set up this scored event, it was a 5K run type of event, and now you're going to switch to be a cross-country type of event, we need whole new reports for that. So what we do for you is we automatically delete and rebuild the proper reports based on the scored event you have. So for cross-country, you'll see this and you have to worry about it. It's just doing what it needs to do. So it will delete any custom reports and regenerate default reports. So this is critical to understand because this is why we recommend setting up scored events and team scoring rules before you do any customization of your reports or add reports or even touch the reporting area. So always make sure that you complete your team scoring setup before you go overboard on updating reports and exploring that area, because you're going to have to delete everything and have the system build the default reports again if you go back later and add in team scoring rules. So just something to keep in mind, that order of operations, you want to set up the scored events and the team scoring rules before you go in and update your reports. In addition, saving the team scoring rules, you'll see this in the next pop-up here, the apply team type scoring options. What it does is it allows you to copy the scoring rules you just had set up at the scored event level to all team types that are associated with that scored event. And again, this is why you want to have your team types set up after the scored events, and then you set up your team scoring rules so that you'll have the link between your scored events to your team types, and the system will be able to apply the scored event rules to your existing and linked team types. So if you follow this order of operations, it'll all work out in the end. But this is good to understand, because if you ever get into a situation where your team types don't have the right scoring rules, all you got to do is go into your team scoring rules and click Save, Update Team Types, and it will update the team types with the scoring rules from the scored event. And there'll be this little setting here. It'll ask you, what do you want to do? Do you want to apply these scoring rules to all team types? Or do you want to apply only to the team types without scoring rules? Or do you not want to touch the team types? So you have some options here, but it's just kind of good to understand what exactly this is doing. So that was a lot of stuff. I don't know, James, do we have any questions we wanted to bring up before I move on to reports?
No, I just wanted to mention just a couple points on what Avery said, and just kind of kick this whole thing off. We're demonstrating a ton of technology today for cross country, and when you start looking at the whole team results platform that we provide in RunSignup and just everything that we're providing, one thing to note here is that this is a gift to the industry. When you go to renew your RaceDay Suite license, you will never count these registrations or any of the participation against your license. So as Avery said at the beginning, You got the full use of the platform, everything he's showing you here, not only for scoring, completely free, but then also the use of the platform. So if you're a cross-country timer out there, this is our gift to you in the industry.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now that we're done with our scored event and team scoring rules, you'll be able to get into reports. So by default, we only create a single report for each and every scored event you have. It's called a team finisher list report. And basically, this report is sufficient for creating all of the results at RunSignup for you. So if you want to publish results and you've seen the way that RunSignup results look, where there's an overall list and then there's team standings, and you can click into the teams and view all the members, all of that stuff in the back end is built for you when you set up an auto save for this single report. So the team finisher list is that one critical thing that you really need to worry about having if you're doing online results. It will do everything you need for you. There's a few small things of note with the default report that has the team finish list in it. If you are using athletic.net or you need to submit results to athletic.net, you can use the export function on that report, and there will be an option in there to generate an athletic.net export that will work with athletic.net. They can accept that. We do not at this time support athletic.live. It's something that we're looking into implementing for next fall. In addition to that, there's also a setting called unattached runners, allow unattached runners for team finisher list. By default, this report section does not include anyone who does not have a team association. So if you have unattached runners in your race that you know about, there's one of two ways to handle this. Some people create an unattached team. Others just use this setting. It's in the filters and sorts section of the report builder. You can kind of see, if you can see my cursor on the screen. On the left here, this is editing a report, and at the bottom of this section, because the filters and sorts area, you can say, I want this section to allow unattached runners, and it will show unattached runners along with, it'll say UNA for unattached for them in their team. So just some little things of note for the team finisher list report section. Now, again, that's all we create for you because cross-country timers like to do things differently, so we kind of leave it up to you to build things the way you want if you want additional reports. Again, only do this after having set up all of your team scoring rules, so you don't have to rebuild everything again after setting that up. I'm going to go into detail and show you a bit of these, but team rosters is an option if you select all events. It just is a nice list of all teams with all of their members broken out by scored event, and it should have everything that you need. If you needed to print out packets for rosters, you can use the print preview option, and then there's a setting in that print preview option to create or make a new page at the end of each section, so it'll spit out a page for each team you have. You can stuff that into packets, and you're good to go for your packets, getting the chips into them and sending them off to your coaches. Team detail report section. This is the pretty standard report that shows a list of teams with the member details within each section of that team. So it'll show you their 1 through 5 and then the displacements, all of the points for all of the members, their names, and so on and so forth. Beneath that, we have a dual meet team detail section. So it will generate a combination, all combinations of teams scored head-to-head along with all of the member info. So it's like a team detail report section, but it does the head-to-head. So it'll say team 1 versus team 2. Here's all of team 1's info. Here's all of team 2's info. Next, the team summary report section. This is just a condensed list of teams without member details. It just doesn't show all of the information about the members. It just shows you the top level information. So team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4, and so on and so forth, obviously in order of points. Next, there is a TFIRST report section. So if you are publishing results to TFIRST, you will be familiar with using this. Basically, this adding this section to a report allows you to do the TFIRST autosave method, which is how you would be able to submit results from RaceDay scoring to TFirst. Next, we have a predefined mile split report section. So if you needed to export a report in mile split format, you have to build a report that has a section called mile split, and then you can export that report and it'll work with their submission process. Next, there's a close finish report section, which is available for all types of events, but it is pretty nice, I think, for cross country. If you want to check on, it allows you to check on close finishers to compare to your photo finish system. You can use this in conjunction with our new feature to swap positions in raw reads as a way to say, switch the times between two runners so that it would flip their positions. So a lot of times you'll be using finish links or a photo finish system, and you can check in on your close finish report to see, hey, here's some people that are within 1 second of each other or within 0.5 seconds or whatever you define. And you'll be able to get a quick list of those, and you could pop over to your raw reads area and make those changes as needed. And I'll show that off. So just some quick examples. This is what your team finisher list looks like. Pretty straightforward. And then when you publish it to RunSignup, you get this nice individual results and team results look. You can click in on the right side to team results, and you can click into the teams themselves. It'll give you more information about the team, the members within it, and so on and so forth. Like this. So if you did need or want to create more reports for your race, just come into reports, click build report. If you haven't spent much time in the report builder, definitely recommend checking it out. It's important to understand how to use the report builder in RaceDay scoring. It's a critical aspect of the feature of the software, and in order to really be effective using RaceDay scoring, you have to understand how to edit reports and how to build new ones. So you just come in, click build report. On the left, you can title the report whatever you want. Select which event you're going to add a section to this report for. So you can select here college men, and then based on the scored event that you have selected there, it will give you a list of different report sections that are available for that scoring type. So this was cross country, so I have all of my cross country reports that are available here. So you would just select which you are going to add in here, and if you had selected a scored event that had multiple team types that were available for it, so let's say I was doing college men and I was doing an event that had NAIA and D3, you have the option that pops up whenever you add a report to determine what you want to do here. You can select one, and it will just add the section filtered so that only people in NAIA are in this report section. If you select more than one, it combines all of the people in all of those team types. So this is giving you the ability to either separate out your results or combine them all together. It's kind of up to you what you need to do, what you want to do. It's just good to understand what this does. This is just a look at what our team rosters report looks like. Gives you basic info on the people in the team, their gender, their year, if you imported it, and their registration event. Team details, this just shows each and every team with their placement. This is where it'll show their average clock time. It'll also show all of the member information, their scores, who was a displacer over 7, who was, what their times were, what the pace was, and so on. Just an example of the dual meet team detail. It'll show sections for each head-to-head pairing. So Bernathlon versus Valley Forge here. Valley Forge beat them out. Bernathlon was second in that head-to-head competition based on their team scores, and then it'll list the next one. So this will generate every single combination between all teams. If you have a lot of teams, it might take a while to run this report. Usually it's, you got 5 or less teams for a dual meet, but just keep that in mind. If you decide to run this on a massive invite, it might take a while to run the report. This is the team summary. Just shows you, like I said, a very condensed view of all the teams listed in order of their placements. Does show the top scorers and the average clock times here. So if you are using TFIRS, again, I'll just do a quick overview here. You just have to add a report with at least one TFIRS report section. Usually add multiple within it. You can just do one. Once you've created this, you'll have this option where you usually see like auto saves. It'll say TFIRS publish settings. You do that, you log into TFIRS using your user account for TFIRS, and you have to set up a few different fields. You have to make sure that you enter in any required information by TFIRS that's missing, and so on and so forth. Then once you get that all set up, you use this TFIRS publish button that gets created for you after you set up the settings, and that will submit your results to TFIRS. It'll also give you a nice little link to the view the results in the pop-up that shows after you submit, so you can check it out to make sure that everything's good. Just a note here, these are not autosaves. It's only a simple manual push, so typically you'll make sure that everything is correct with your results, and then you submit to TFIRS later that day or the next day, whenever you usually do it. We do not support auto-saving on this. So just some screens, it'll show you in here some of the fields that are required. You got to put in the name, the gender, and all these different things. They let you put in like the course conditions, the weather, so on and so forth, the wind and the temperature. I think some of these are optional, but fill them in, it makes their results look a bit nicer. And some more. This is the meet details, so the overall race details. This is just showing when you actually log into TFIRS, you have to pick an event at TFIRS to publish to. Okay, so the close finish report, I talked about this earlier. Again, if you wanted to check on close finishers to compare to your photo finish system, use the raw reads and swap positions to swap times between two runners to change the result of a close finish. So when you create a report section that is of this type, on the left, you'll see this little pop-up that says, finishers will be shown that finished within the following time of each other. Default is 1 second. You can change that down all the way to 0.001 if you really wanted to. And it will give you this list of pairs of runners that were within that amount of time. So you can double check these and pop over to raw reads, select those, find those two reads and then, or those two participants, and then select the checkboxes on the right and then use the swap position button, and it will just swap times between them. So that's how you would go about fixing any close finishes that you have. Okay, so we've kind of gone through all of the team scoring and scored events and team types and reports, and now we're going to get all the way back to streams. So streams are usually a little bit more simple for cross country, but the one thing that is a little bit different is if you are using a finish link system, you may want to think about how you want to designate main and backup. So a lot of times what I see is that timers use finish links as their main system and chip as their backup system. So the way that main and backup and RaceDay scoring works is we never use a backup read if there exists a read for that person on a main system. So if you were doing cross country and majority of your data was chips and you had a couple of ones sent from finish links, or you wanted to always ensure that the finish links read is used over the chip system read, you actually would want to set finish links as your main and chip as your backup, because you know that photo finish is always going to be more accurate than your chip data. So I typically suggest that for cross country. If you're a really heavy finish links user and you're good at mapping, getting your times right from finish links, that's usually what I suggest. So this means, again, that any data coming from finish links will override data from the chip system. Usually this is what cross-country timers want. Now, if you happen to miss someone, it will pull in their chip read because it's totally missing from the main system. But at a later point, if you did get a read or a time added through finish links for that person, it will trump it and overwrite that backup time. So when you are setting up finish link streams, basically we have a way that we interpret the data. There's a start time in the header of the file that's created by finish links that we use to figure out what time of day all of the reads occurred at, because the way that they export their data, it's all in net times. Everything that we need is in time of day, so we have to kind of calculate that. So you'll want to make sure that the start times are properly set in finish links. They usually are if you're a good finish links timer, so that when they get added to race day scoring, all of the adjustments are made properly. As a second note, if you are a user of marker reads in race day scoring, we do support marker reads being set by finish links systems. So you can configure your marker reads such that you have them in order, and basically it'll treat it as a gun time. So you don't set your actual gun times in race day scoring, and you let finish links set them for you. That is supported. Timing locations. So typically you'll have a finish for cross country. Almost never is there a start. Sometimes you have split points, but for the most part it's just a finish line. What we see is many timers will create separate finish lines for each and every scored event. They do this because they like to have time filters for each location that they have, even though they actually are physically in the same area. They want to say, hey, I know that reads for JV Boyds should be within this time and that time. So they create separate locations for each race just so they can put those filters nice and tight. You don't have to do that. You could have one single finish and just use that one finish for all of your data. It's kind of up to you, see what it feels like. So one thing that we do support with race day scoring is the situation where coaches do not declare which event participants are going to race in, and it's up to the timer and the chips to figure out which race they're actually in. So we do support this system called data actions, which allow you to do all sorts of things based on read data. So we have a little guide here that tells you how you can get this set up. It's a little bit of a complicated setup, so I'm not going to go into detail today on it. But basically, you can say, hey, anytime I get a read for a participant at this location, let's say between this time and that time, I want to automatically move them to this scored event or this registration event. So you could say, hey, I know the JV Boys finish is between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. or something. And so anybody who is seen at the stream between 3 and 4, automatically move them over to JV. So it's a pretty powerful functionality, but it is dangerous. If you mess it up, you're going to get people switching events all over the place, and it's going to be really confusing. So definitely, if you know you have this kind of events, try it out, set up a test race, put some fake data in, see how it all works before you put it into practice at a real event. All right, so now you've got your setup all done and you're finally at the point where you're starting to get rosters from your coaches. We know that the rosters are not always the best format, but basically what you'll need is just make sure that you have your event. So that's your JV boys, JV girls, whatever your setup is going to be like, and team name for each participant, along with the standard info, gender, name, and so on. So you optionally can include the school year. That's a standard field in race day scoring. If you have sophomore, SO, whatever, you can include that. And the TFIRS ID. If you are submitting results to TFIRS, you need TFIRS ID included. So those are the optional fields there. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but if you don't have team type in the spreadsheet that you're importing, you probably don't if you only have one team type. We let you map an existing team type or create a new one right in the import. So you'll see this step here on the bottom left. It says map teams to team types. And this will allow you to, if you don't have any team types available in the dropdowns on the right where it says teams, you can actually go ahead and create a new team type right in the import process so that you don't have to worry about it. So this is if you forgot to do that team type setup first. You can add it and you can call it teams and say this new team type I'm going to create is valid for all of my scored events. And then you can select for each team here which team type they should be. And so that is just a way to get around if you forget to set up team types before you import participants. So you can just click continue and it'll go on with your import. It's pretty straightforward if you've done imports with RaceDay scoring in the past. Pretty normal stuff. So it'll just create the teams for you, assign the members based on their team in the spreadsheet, and you'll be good to go. So one thing before, we're getting close to the end here, but one thing I wanted to just show a quick tip for. If you ever run into sync issues, you see like sync failed in RaceDay scoring. This can happen in cross country or any kind of team event where you are deleting and adding things again a lot. So we know with cross country, what will happen is you got your roster spreadsheet, you import everything. We create teams and team types for you. It's all there and good and clean, but sometimes you have to like delete everything and start over. And sometimes you don't delete everything that should have been deleted when you tried to, and you end up with a sync error because now you've got like team types that are out there that don't reference the scored events because they were removed. So if you run into this issue where you're working through some changes, you deleted a bunch of stuff, but things are kind of screwy, and you can't get past these sync problems, first thing to check, go into participant sync, click show sync queue, and you might see something like this. It says, hey, there's these team type changes that won't get pushed to RunSignup. And the reason is that maybe the team type doesn't exist anymore or something. So you can come in here, just click delete, and that will clear out all of your sync errors. And then you can go ahead and proceed with whatever you were doing, getting things set up again properly. So just keep this in mind in your back pocket. If you run into those sync errors ever with RaceDay scoring, check this out. See if there's something stuck in here that won't go away. And that is likely the cause of your problem. So just delete it and you should be all good to go. All right, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. Went through a whole lot of stuff, I know, but you know, some cool things that we do have coming in the near future, I wanted to just quickly go over. So I mentioned this briefly, Tier 2 scoring. This is that kind of automatic varsity JV separation based on your scoring depth rules. We're going to be adding a team spread column. This is the difference in time between the first and last scored runner per team. So this is nice. I think it looks good in the team summary sections. It's a nice way to show, hey, this team had a really tight 1 through 5. And that's a really critical data point for cross country, in my opinion, is a team who has a really tight 1 through 5. They're generally a really good team. Next, we're going to be adding a dual meet summary report section. So we already have the team detail. This is going to be a condensed version of that dual meet detail. So it won't show all of the individual members. It will just show which team won, essentially, between the two in the head-to-head combinations. Next, we are going to be including that unattached runner feature in the team rosters report. So right now, unattached runners are not going to show up in team rosters. If you need unattached runners to show up in team rosters, you'll be able to do that in the next update. And finally, the ghosted runner changes we have coming will allow you to say that the ghosted runners that are automatically added to fill out the teams that were incomplete are now going to be, you can say that they're going to be based on the last finisher in the event instead of the last finisher per team. So those will all be coming soon. I think that is all. So were there any questions that people had before we sign off for today?
No, excellent job, Avery. The only other thing I wanted to add is Roger Bradshaw was, building race director for the last 30 years, and he was very instrumental in our building out of cross country. And so a lot of the features that you're seeing today, even this week as we were building out and kind of getting our final release ready for this next big cross country push, he's very involved, making sure that our scores are lining up exactly right. And so just want to say thank you for all the work that he's done to make this really real for you guys scoring cross country and using RaceDay scoring.
Absolutely. Big thanks, as always, to Roger Bradshaw. So normal stuff as we finish up today. If you want to learn more, help.RaceDay scoring has some great guides on getting started in general RaceDay scoring. But what I think is best, use the in-app help. Click get help if you're stuck on something or having troubles, and we'll reach out to you whenever we can, usually pretty quick. Or just email us, raceday@runsignup.com is our support inbox, and we'll help you out with your questions. like I said, feel free to use this if you're just stuck on something or confused. It doesn't bother us at all. We've got support staff ready to help you out, especially on weekends. If you're not able to produce results or something like that, we really don't want that to happen. So get help. Our support staff, their thing on the weekend is, hey, anything that they can do to get results to you or get it to developers if it's a bug or a fix that needs to be done, that's their critical role. They are just here to make sure that you have results at the end of the day. So if you're stuck and you're not sure, do this, please. We want to help you. And next, if you do have really specific questions about the best way to score a meet, or if you want to figure out like, hey, how would I go about transitioning my company to use RaceDay scoring for all of my events? How do I manage things in general with RaceDay scoring compared to my old software? We definitely recommend a one-on-one session. Crisp is our RaceDay expert. He's a user of RaceDay scoring, and he trains people week in, week out, helps them with their specific questions, offers best practices. So you can reach out and set up a time to do a one-on-one demo with him at this link here, calendly.com/RSU RaceDay tools. And you can click like beginner or advanced RaceDay scoring training. It doesn't really matter what you choose there, just gives him a heads up about how to prepare. And we generally recommend that if you have like a specific question, bring a race that you know about that is prompting that question, or if you wanted to rescore an old race, have the files kind of ready to go to rescore it, and Chris will walk you through that. And I believe that is all. So any final questions before we sign off for today? All right, so thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one. Bye.
Okay, well, I think I see some new people to the channel, so thank you all for joining us. Brian and I are here to say goodbye and thank you for watching. So goodbye and thank you for watching. If you want to see more though, you can subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and all, that way you get alerted when we post new videos. And if you'd like to click on the thumbs up button and let us know you enjoy this kind of content, we'd be very grateful for that, wouldn't we? You know it! Thanks, Brian. Always got my back.